Hi there. Thank you so much for being here today. If we haven't met yet, my name is Lexie. I'm a nutritional therapy practitioner, a certified personal trainer, a certified pre and postnatal coach. I'm also a Norma with My Empirica, and I also am the person behind a lot of the texts and emails and a lot of the communication through Platform Daily. So I'm doing a lot of different things, but it's so nice to connect with you through this webinar so that I can teach you all the things that I love: sleep, strength, and everything in between. So thank you again for being here. And I just want to tell you a little bit about what we're going to learn about today. So I'm going to be teaching you how you can improve the quality and the quantity of your sleep so that you can feel energized and get strong. So I am passionate about sleep. I'm passionate about strength, and these are both very interconnected. So not only do I love a good nap and lifting some weights, but I've also seen the incredibly powerful healing effects that sleep and strength can have, not only on myself, but also with my clients. And so I want to teach you how you can use this powerful combination to change your own life in so many ways. So the objectives of things that we're going to cover in this webinar are learning about circadian rhythm and why it matters, discussing the 5 areas we can address to improve sleep, deciding which area is most important for you in particular, and then hopefully you'll walk away with some actionable steps on things that you can improve in your own sleep. Okay, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story, not too much, but when I was in college, I was sleeping so much. I was exhausted, and that might sound, normal for a college kid, but every moment that I was not either in classes or playing volleyball for my college team or working part-time, I was asleep. And I was wondering to myself, why do I sleep so much, but I'm still always so tired? It turned out that I had 2 autoimmune conditions that were not diagnosed at the time. And so I wasn't able to absorb nutrients properly, which means even though I was sleeping, I just had no energy whatsoever. And so long story short, I was celiac, so I went gluten-free. I changed a lot of, diet and lifestyle things. And, I slowly started to get my energy back, but sleep was a huge part of the recovery process for me. So that was something I've always been passionate about. My husband is also a firefighter. So, sleep is very important for him as well. So it's a big part of my own life. And I've also, like I said, seen it help so many of my clients. So that is why I'm so passionate about sleep. And I know that strength training can also help your sleep. And so these 2 things combined, my 2 loves, are what I want to teach you about today. So some common sleep struggles that you might have are falling asleep or staying asleep. Maybe you wake up in the middle of the night. Do you get hot in the middle of the night? Or maybe you get a second wind right before bedtime. Or, maybe you just have kids or pets or, other things that wake you up throughout the night. Obviously, shift work, that's a whole thing in and of itself. So there are a lot of different sleep struggles that people can have. But one of the things that I want to really drive home is that quality of sleep is just as important, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But even though I was sleeping 14 hours a day, I still wasn't getting good quality sleep. I wasn't recovering well. So there's a lot of different things that go into this, and whatever your sleep struggles are, we're going to talk about some strategies that you can use to address those. But before we dive in, let's just cover a few things. This is not a exclusive list by any means. These are just some of the effects that sleep can have. So it's not just about your energy, right? It's not just being tired throughout the day. It's also about your insulin sensitivity. Your immunity is definitely compromised when you don't sleep enough. Sleep plays an essential role in your hormone function, which we're going to get into a little bit when we're talking about circadian rhythm and the hormones that are produced through that. It also increases the likelihood that you will hold on to adipose tissue or fat, and makes it much harder for you to gain muscle mass. So there's definitely a lot of other effects outside of your energy. And so we definitely want to prioritize sleep over Pretty much everything, if possible. Okay, and like I mentioned earlier, not all sleep is created equal. So there are various stages of sleep, and the most restorative stages would be your deep sleep and your REM sleep. So if you're getting 8 hours, you're getting a good amount of quantity, but you're not going through your sleep cycles efficiently, then you're not going to get the same restorative effects of that sleep. So stage 1 would be when you are, just about to fall asleep, you're still somewhat aware. Stage 2, you're losing consciousness, but it's still very light sleep. Stages 3 and 4, that's when we get into that deep sleep, that deep restorative sleep. And then REM sleep is the last part of the cycle. And that's when, your mind is really active, but your body is completely paralyzed. But it's really important, especially for like emotional health and that kind of thing. So, and in the first part of the night, you're getting more deep sleep. And in the second part of the night, you're getting more REM sleep. So going to bed later, like from 12 to 8 is not the same as from 10 to 6. So we want to make sure we're getting to bed, around 10 p.m. if possible. And then if you, wake up earlier than usual, you're probably going to miss out on the more of the REM sleep. So as you can tell, there's a lot of variables, a lot of moving pieces involved. So that's why we want to make sure that we're going through this entire cycle, 5 to 6 times a night, getting about 8 to 10 hours, somewhere in there, if possible. Your cycles are about 90 minutes long, can vary, but if we're interrupted in the middle of our sleep, we get woken up, then we have to start the cycle over. So you can see how if we continue to get interrupted time after time, every couple hours, then we're not really going to get to the deep and REM sleep as often as we should, or maybe even at all. So that's why we want to make sure that we are not only just getting, clocking our 8 hours in bed, but we're also getting really high quality sleep. And so moral of the story is, like I said, even though you might be sleeping enough, make sure your quality is good. And sleep trackers can be great for this to kind of see, where you are right now. And if you work on these things, you can improve them over time. So things like a Whoop or an Oura Ring, those are things that can track your sleep for you and tell you how much you're getting of each stage of sleep. All right, so this is kind of the meat of what we're going to talk about, and I'm going to try and go as quickly as possible. So the 5 things that we're going to talk about to address sleep struggles are circadian rhythm, nutrition, supplements, stress, and movement. So everything is important. We're just going to go through the basics, the overview. I have a sleep course where I dive deep into all of these things, but for tonight, we're just going to talk about kind of the basics, get the gist of it. And if you want more, please reach out to me and I'd be happy to direct you to my course. So first of all, circadian rhythm. This is something that we probably all have heard circadian rhythm before. We know it has something to do with our sleep, something to do with, a 24-hour cycle, but what is it? It's actually the internal processes that our bodies follow on a 24-hour cycle. So there are these genes and proteins in our bodies that show rhythmic activity called body clocks. And so the master clock is the suprachiasmatic nucleus. Try and say that 5 times fast, or just call it the SCN. And that's in our brain. But that's not the only clock. We also have these peripheral clocks throughout the body, the liver, the gut, the pancreas, and all of these clocks kind of work together and hopefully keep our bodies running on schedule. But they all have to be synchronized together, which is kind of where things can get a little messed up, which we'll talk about how to fix that. But things like diet, light, genetics, temperature, meal timing, stress, they all affect our circadian rhythm. So it's important that we address all those, different areas that we have control over so that we can, regulate our circadian rhythm as best as we can. And so circadian rhythm is affected by those things, but circadian rhythm also regulates these things like sleep and appetite and hormones, your temperature, your blood pressure, your brain function. So literally everything is affected by your circadian rhythm. So it's not just about our sleep. So that's something important to know, because I know that's what I used to think. Oh, well, it's just about when I wake up and when I go to bed, but there's so much more involved. And so what a proper circadian rhythm would look like, we have this nice little graph here by the Paleo Mom, but the proper circadian rhythm would be that our cortisol is highest in the morning. It gets a bad rep, right? Cortisol, the stress hormone, but it's also our waking hormone. So if you don't have cortisol, you don't wake up, and that would not be good. So making sure that our cortisol is highest in the morning, and then it starts to go down throughout the day, and then once it gets dark, our melatonin starts to rise, and it should be high throughout the night and then lowest in the morning. So they're kind of almost opposites, right? Our sleeping hormone and our waking hormone. So that's what it should look like. A lot of times it's dysregulated, which is why we can get that second wind of energy before bed, or wake up in the middle of the night wide awake and wonder why we can't fall back asleep. All of these things contribute to, if that's your issue, you're like, oh, okay, it's probably a circadian rhythm thing. And we'll kind of talk about how you can figure out what is my, what's the reason that I can't sleep well. And that's what I go through in depth in my course and walk you through it step by step. Okay, and when your body clocks that we talked about aren't working properly, like we said, it's gonna put your cortisol, your melatonin, and other hormones a little bit out of whack. So if they're not rising throughout the day, that means our body clocks probably aren't functioning as they should. And so while we can't control everything, we're gonna just focus on the things that we can control. So the two biggest factors that impact your circadian rhythm are light and temperature. And so light, possibly one of the most important things we can do just in our daily lives for all health reasons, is to manage our light exposure. And so what this means is getting good quality sunshine as much as you can tolerate without getting sunburnt and all that good stuff, and monitoring or managing our blue light exposure. You know, we're always on our computers, our phones, all those things, because work from home life, all that stuff. So managing our light exposure can be huge in impacting our circadian rhythm. So something about the sunrise and the sunset that is super cool is that there are actually certain rays in the sunrise and sunset that set our body clocks. So for example, if you watch the sunrise and you get those rays of light into your eyeballs, no sunglasses, no glasses, obviously don't look at it if it hurts, but getting those rays of light will set your cortisol pulse for the day. And it tells your body, okay, it's daytime, we're alive, be a human. And you want to get, at least, if you can, 5 to 10 minutes. More is always better, not always, but 10-ish minutes would be great in the morning, at least. And that kind of sets your circadian rhythm for the day. Obviously, if you can get outside throughout the day, go for it. That would be amazing, right? But I know that's not possible for everyone. So as long as you can get outside, 10 or more minutes in the morning, that is huge. Okay, next would be if you are on screens a lot throughout the day, you do want to have a good pair of blue blockers, but you don't want them to block all blue light, right? Because blue light is good. It's in the sunshine, but when it's in isolation, like your computer screen or your phone, that's not so good. So we want partial blue blockers. And I have a link for this, which I'll give you guys at the end. But if you want a good brand, BlueBlox is amazing. And they block about 30% of the blue rays, which is what they've done studies on, and BlueBlox knows what they're doing. So I trust them and their science. So making sure that we have some sort of blue blockers if needed. We're looking at screens a lot throughout the day. And then watching the sunset. Again, those rays kind of tell your body, okay, now it's getting dark, it's nighttime, it's time for melatonin to start rising. And then if you are on screens after dark, definitely get a good pair of full blue blockers. So like 100% blocking. Again, blue blocks, I have a link for and a discount code for. And you definitely want to wear those anytime you're looking at screens. And also like overhead lights, the light on your smoke detector, your fridge, like those are all blue lights. So just making sure we wear those after dark. Obviously don't scroll in bed. That's like probably the worst thing that you can do is just scroll on your phone while you're trying to fall asleep. Not ideal. And then if you can invest in some blackout curtains or get a sleep mask, it makes a huge difference because even your closed eyes are still taking in some of that light. So I highly recommend just managing your light exposure however you can. And then temperature. This is one of those things that we might not necessarily be able to control our internal temperature super well, but we can do things to help support it, right? So we can turn the temperature down in our house. We can turn on fans. We can get a mattress cooling pad. I have one called Eat Sleep, and I am obsessed with it. It's super comfortable, and it makes it as cold, or it actually heats you in the winter if you want that. So highly recommend that. You can get like a special pillow. There's one called the Helix pillow that makes sure it's breathable and not gonna make you overheat at night. And then you can also do something kind of counterintuitive, but taking a hot shower or a bath or doing a sauna session before bed can actually, even though it's making your skin hot, it's telling your internal body, hey, we need to cool down. So it can actually speed up the process because you want your temperature to be at its lowest. I think it's about like 2 hours before you wake up in the morning. So all throughout the night, your temperature should be going down, 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 down. And that's a big part of your circadian rhythm because every cell in your body recognizes temperature, right? So it makes sense that temperature would have a big impact on your circadian rhythm. All right, and then last thing about this is that routine is so, so important. If you think about it, kids usually have this whole routine. They do, bath time, then story time, and then drink milk or whatever. They have this whole routine. And as adults, we need that too, but it's very overlooked. So something like what's listed here, obviously you can create your own routine, but if you're like, I have no idea what to do before bed, if I can't watch TV, what do I do? Here are some ideas of things that you can do before bed, just to tell your body. Because again, that routine, it's like telling your body, this is what we do before bed. And it creates that association in your brain so that your body will, your thoughts impact your physiology, right? So your body will be like, oh, we do this every day at this time. That must mean I'm going to bed soon. So coming up with some sort of routine that works for you can be huge. Okay, now we're going to get into nutrition. And I promise I spent the most time on circadian rhythm. I'm not going to spend that much time on the rest of them, but it's just so important that I had to dive deep into that. Okay, so for nutrition, I'm going to keep it pretty basic, but of course, if you want more information, I dive deep in my sleep course. So nutrition for sleep is pretty simple, straightforward. Make sure you're eating enough food because under eating is one of the main reasons that I see women not being able to sleep at night. They increase their calories and their body's like, oh, I'm safe. I can sleep, I can rest. And they don't have that blood sugar crash in the middle of the night, which is another one. So even if we're eating enough, but maybe our macros are a little out of balance, or maybe we're eating a lot of processed sugar or even just natural sugars by themselves, that can really create some blood sugar dysregulation. So that's another one as well. Drinking water with electrolytes. This is probably the simplest thing that you can do. It's just adding some sea salt or some lemon or even an electrolyte supplement to your water. Because most people that I talk to, I'm like, well, why do you wake up at night? And a lot of times it's, well, I have to go to the bathroom. So if we can eliminate that altogether, then so many people's sleep would improve because then once you go to the bathroom, you're awake, maybe you had to turn a light on, and so it can create this whole thing. So just really focusing on hydration, but with electrolytes. And then some other things we can do are eliminating or reducing inflammatory foods, which we'll talk about a little bit, and then just keeping it simple. So don't overcomplicate it. Don't try and make it some complicated thing. Just, eat a lot of protein, a lot of good fat, eat healthy starchy carbs, especially at dinner time. Add some spices to make it taste better, but don't go crazy with these recipes and stuff. Keep it simple, that's for sure. And as far as carbs and fat go, we always want to pair them, right? So even if we have carbs like fruit or, sweet potato or these other great nutritious carbs, if we have them by themselves, a lot of times what'll happen is our blood sugar will skyrocket and then it'll crash. And we don't want that, especially at bedtime, right? Because what's going to happen is if your blood sugar crashes in the middle of the night, then your cortisol is going to rise. It's going to say, oh no, we have no food, we have no fuel. Your cortisol is going to rise, wake you up. And that's usually like if you wake up 2 to 3 a.m., that can be a really big sign that you are maybe having some blood sugar dysregulation. And then don't be afraid of carbs. Okay, I'm not saying they're bad, just pair them with a fat to slow the digestion of them. And then at dinner time, don't go crazy, but definitely have a good amount of carbs, especially starchy carbs, because they actually produce serotonin, which is a precursor to melatonin. And that's our sleeping hormone. So we need serotonin in order to make melatonin. So a lot of low carb diets, I see a lot of women who are doing that really struggle with sleep. So if you are on a low fat diet and low carb diet and you're not sleeping well, definitely maybe introduce some more. Okay. And then as far as fat goes, we know how important fat is for our hormone production. So if we don't have enough fat, how are we going to make melatonin? How are we going to make these hormones that are, they need fat in order to be produced? So that's super important. And then there's actually a study that showed that omega-3s can improve your sleep efficiency and quality. So whether that's eating a lot of good wild caught seafood or just taking a high quality omega-3 supplement can be super important for sleep. And then protein, again, we're not going to dive deep here, but tryptophan is an essential amino acid and it is in protein, right? So what we need tryptophan for is to produce serotonin. So tryptophan comes first, then serotonin, then melatonin. So it's kind of like this cascade. So you can see it's not just about melatonin. It's not about popping a melatonin supplement. It's about your body being able to produce it because it has all the things that it needs. Okay, and then as far as caffeine goes, listen, I'm not here to take anyone's coffee away from them. I love coffee. I'm a coffee snob. I'm not going to tell you to stop drinking it unless, you've done like everything else in the world and it's still not working, then you might need to cut it. Some people just are really, really sensitive to caffeine. But as a general rule, most people do well if they just start early and end early. So, by 12 p.m., I'd say is probably the max that you want to be drinking caffeine. Obviously, earlier is probably even better. And then just try and stick to one a day. I know it's hard. Or if you're having like something with a very low caffeine content, like, tea is not as high usually in caffeine, maybe having 2, but still having that time where you cut it off by about 12 p.m. And so if you, like I said, if you've tried everything else though, and you're like, I don't know what else to do, then you might want to eliminate it altogether. Okay, now supplements. I'm super excited to talk about this because I've actually created a sleep bundle that has all the things that you need. Of course, you're going to make the diet and lifestyle changes too, but supplements can be super helpful if you've done everything else. Again, this is not like out supplementing a bad diet and lifestyle. It's just if you're trying everything, here's some ways you can help. So magnesium, vitamin C, D3, K2, and omega-3s. These are some of the supplements that we're going to talk about today and are in the sleep bundle. So magnesium improves sleep efficiency and your melatonin function. It reduces cortisol and it reduces waking at night. And this is all from studies. Magnesium has been very well studied for sleep, and so it's pretty well known. However, there's so many different types of magnesium out there. So you're like, how do I know which one to get? Which is why I created a bundle so that you don't even have to think about it. But the number one mineral deficiency is magnesium. And we need, several different types of magnesium, not just one. So there's this magnesium I love called Trimag, and it has 3 different types in it. And the one that is my favorite and is so good for sleep is called magnesium threonate. And the reason it's so good for sleep is because it's the only one that crosses the blood-brain barrier. So every other type of magnesium, I'm not saying they're bad, but they all have different purposes. So this magnesium has 3 different types, including threonate, which is amazing. Another thing you can try is transdermal magnesium, which is like, a spray or something that you put on your skin, and that can help a lot of people as well because it's absorbed really quickly. So if you have digestive issues or, that kind of thing, sometimes the transdermal one works well. Okay, and then vitamin C, you might be surprised to see this on the list for sleep because, it's good for immune system, but what does it do for sleep? Well, it's a key player in building the sleep-related hormones and neurotransmitters. And there was actually a study that showed that insufficient vitamin C directly increases the chances of sleep disturbances. And it shortens the quality of your sleep and the overall duration. So I thought that was really interesting because I've never really thought about that before until I heard that study. So don't be afraid of your citrus fruits and all that good stuff. But as you know, when it comes to supplementation, quality is super important, right? So most supplements will use a form called ascorbic acid. And just as an FYI, sometimes that's made from high fructose corn syrup. Yikes. So definitely want to be careful about your sourcing with vitamin C, which again, I will link to my favorite high quality vitamin C that you can purchase. Okay, and then D3 and K2. So these are 2 different nutrients, but I always talk about them together because they're cofactors, meaning they need to be taken together in order to be, used efficiently and properly in the body. So I want you to know, if you have a vitamin D supplement and it doesn't have K2, it's not really a good supplement, okay? So make sure if you have a D3, it also has K2 in it. It's vital for hormones and neurotransmitters. It reduces sleep disturbances and increases sleep time. Vitamin D is needed for like everything, right? We think about it from getting it from the sunshine, which is amazing. But sometimes if we don't, if it's the winter time, we can't get outside, or if we just are inside a lot, which most of us are, then this can be a really, really good supplement. And especially you want to, make sure you get your levels checked by your doctor and all that good stuff, but it can be a huge piece of the puzzle because we can't always get all the sunshine that we need. And a lot of time we don't get the K2 that we need through our diet because it is kind of hard to get. So as we discussed earlier, we know that our circadian rhythm is affected by light and temperature, of course, too. So like if you can get outside, think of it as a 2-for-1, like you're getting your vitamin D, you're also helping with your circadian rhythm. So that's a super important piece. And then we talked a little bit about this already, but omega-3s, whether it's in a high quality, wild caught seafood, or if it's a supplement, it supports circadian rhythm, it reduces cortisol and inflammation, it reduces disturbances, and it supports deeper sleep. And that was a study that was in as well. So if you can't get it through a supplement, it's totally fine. Just get yourself some wild caught fish. And then there are some other things that can be really supportive of sleep as well. Things like valerian root, chamomile, kava root, tart cherry juice. hops, kiwi, all of those can be really supportive of sleep. So if you're like, yeah, I don't really want to buy, a whole bunch of supplements, you can try some tea, you can try some tart cherry juice, just make sure there's no added sugar. So there are other things that you can definitely do to support your sleep. But sometimes we just need a little extra help, if we have a vitamin C deficiency or, we're not getting enough omega-3s, those are things that we need in order to sleep better. So what I've done, especially with these ones that I just talked about, like valerian root and hops, these are all in the Zen Out, which is part of the sleep bundle. So I love Zen Out because it kind of takes a bunch of those things that, herbs and all that good stuff, and it puts it into one supplement. So that's why I love the Zen Out. So in the sleep bundle is Trimag, D3 and K2, vitamin C, and Zen Out, okay? And that means you got to get your omegas from your, wild-caught seafood, or you can also buy the omega-3s separately. But if you use this QR code and use code Well From Within, you'll get 10% off of the whole bundle. So definitely check that out. Again, these are Empirica supplements. You can go to myempirica.com, and it is the highest quality supplements. I am such a big believer in good supplementation. So I've been using these supplements for years now, and I just created this sleep bundle so that I can, easily tell people like, hey, don't go, on this wild goose chase trying to find all these different supplements. Like, I can just send them one link. Here it is. It's all in one place. So definitely check that out and use that code. And then quickly, I'm just going to touch on this. Melatonin needs to be very cautiously approached. So it is hormone therapy. Melatonin is a hormone. There's no way around it. So it's not just like a regular supplement that you buy, even though you can buy it like that. It should not be used that way. So it is hormone therapy. It's unregulated. Studies showed that melatonin supplements could have anywhere between 40% and 400% of the amount listed on the bottle, which is just crazy to me. So the dosage could be way less or way, way more than is listed on the bottle. So just be very cautious in that, especially with kids. It can have some, possible negative effects. So if you need to use it, definitely work with your doctor. And I would just recommend using it infrequently if you need to. And on that note, I am not a doctor. I'm an NTP, so I'm not licensed to diagnose or treat or cure illness. So please talk to your doctor before you start any supplements. Talk to them about your concerns. I'm always here to help, but your doctor is definitely going to be the one to talk to before you start any supplements. Okay, and stress, we're going to go through this quickly again, because the main thing I want you to understand is that you cannot address sleep without addressing stress. And so there's no way around it. I know it's really hard because it's mostly lifestyle related, but you will not get better sleep until you reduce your stress. And the reason for that is that when you're in this parasympathetic mode, you can rest and digest. When you are stressed out, you're in a sympathetic mode. So that means your cortisol is high, your melatonin can't rise as it naturally would because your cortisol is too high. So that messes up our circadian rhythm. It's just a whole thing, right? So if you're struggling with, just a stressful life, or maybe you have anxiety or these other conditions, obviously talk to your doctor, work with a mental health professional. But everything that we've already talked about is also going to reduce your overall stress. So there's a lot you can do, diet and lifestyle related, in order to reduce your stress. So we're not going to go through all these right now. I think we've already covered most of these. But just know that, like I said, everything that we've already talked about will help reduce your stress. And then anything additional that you can do is going to be super helpful, like connecting with people, just calling a friend if you need to, setting boundaries. Maybe you have a hard time saying no, gratitude, just having, a journal, or even just verbally saying something that you're grateful for every day. All of these things are going to be huge in reducing stress. And then sleep, it's so funny because, again, it's like, I can't sleep if I'm stressed out, but also when I don't sleep, I'm stressed more. So it's like this vicious cycle. So working on our sleep is going to help, and reducing our stress is going to help as well. So it's kind of a chicken and egg thing there. And like I said, if you are struggling with, anxiety or depression or anything else that is really just not allowing you to get your best sleep or make these changes because you're dealing with, mental health, you definitely want to work with a mental health professional on that. The mind-body connection is so strong. So when you have anxious thoughts at night, you're actually creating in your body the physiology to not go to sleep. So that's why it's so important to be working on mental health as you are working on this as well. And then here are just some like daily stress management tips. So again, I don't see this as something that, self-care Sunday, that's not what I'm talking about. Like things that we do every single day, whether that's doing some deep breathing or meditating or prayer, exercising, doing yoga, walking. It doesn't even have to be stressful, which we'll talk about in a minute, but just doing any sort of movement is super helpful as long as it's not too much. Doing something you like, write, draw, read, paint, take a nap, just all of these things that we need to incorporate into our daily life to make sure that we aren't just always in this stressed out state. Oh my goodness. Okay, we finally made it to the last one. So thank you if you're still here. We are going to quickly just talk about movement because, like I said at the beginning, stress and strength training, sleep and strength training are very connected, and we'll talk about how we can use that to help us get sleep. So we know that movement is very supportive of sleep, but too much is not a good thing. So more movement is not necessarily better, right? So more exercise equals more stress, and more stress equals more cortisol, and more cortisol equals less results in the gym, and it also is going to make you not able to sleep as well. So it's not just this like, oh, more is always better. Over exercising can be a huge reason that you aren't sleeping well. So it might be a little scary to do less, but if you feel like, yeah, I'm working out 6-7 days a week and I'm doing high intensity interval training and all that stuff, then you might want to cut back just a little bit and see if that helps improve your sleep at all, because I've seen it in both myself and others. And how are sleep and strength connected? Well, when you, there is actually research that shows that strength training improves your sleep, which is great. But another aspect of it is that when you have more muscle mass, you create more of this compound called adenosine. And adenosine is your sleepiness compound. It makes you feel sleepy the longer that you've been awake. And if you have more muscle mass, you have more adenosine. So you're going to feel sleepier at the end of the day, the more muscle mass you have, which is pretty cool. When you produce more melatonin, or, your melatonin is in the proper flow in your circadian rhythm, you create more brown adipose tissue. And that might sound like not a good thing, but brown adipose tissue actually burns fat. So melatonin and muscle mass are connected. And then the more deep sleep that you get, the more human growth hormone that you produce. So in your deep sleep, that's when you produce a lot of that HGH. And in a 72-hour study that was done, there were individuals that slept 5.5 hours, and they had 60% less muscle mass than those who slept 8.5 hours. So that 3-hour difference made a 60% difference in their muscle mass, which I just think is crazy. It was a very short study, of course, but I think that definitely shows something for sure. Not to mention that increased cortisol, like we talked about, is going to make you store more fat and make it difficult to burn that fat. So we want to strength train, definitely. We want to move our bodies, but we don't want to do it too much, because then it will start to be countereffective. Okay, and then last but not least, get outside. I mean, goodness, this is like a 5-for-1. You're getting your vitamin D, you're helping your circadian rhythm, it's good for your soul. And you can hike, you can walk, you can do yard work in your garden, play with your kids or your pets, ride bikes, swim. Like there's so many things you can do to move your body, and you're also getting all those other benefits at the same time. And then, as far as workout timing goes, really quickly, there is some research that shows that working out in the morning is going to be better for your circadian rhythm. It doesn't mean that you can't work out in the afternoon or night. Definitely, like if that's your only time, go for it. But if you have flexibility, there was a study that showed that 30 minutes after waking up would probably be the ideal time to work out. If you're going to be working out later in the day, it's totally fine. But if it's at nighttime, you definitely want it to be low intensity. Because if I'm working out, let's say 8 p.m. and I'm doing some high intensity training, then my cortisol is going to be through the roof, right? Because my body is under this stress, which, it's usually called good stress. But if I try to go to sleep right after that, it's not going to happen. I'm going to have that second wind, that energy. I'm not going to be able to fall asleep because my cortisol is rising when my melatonin is supposed to be rising. So, in the morning if you can, or if you're doing it at night, definitely low intensity, and always make sure that you are fueled before and after, because that can contribute to stress as well if we are not fueling appropriately. Woo. Okay, so just to summarize what we talked about today, circadian rhythm is so important for our sleep and just general health, and it's affected most by light and temperature, so we really want to work on those. Nutrition and smart supplementation are super important. They're not the only thing, but they can definitely help improve our quantity and quality of sleep. Stress and sleep are interconnected. We cannot separate the two. So we have to reduce stress to sleep better. And then appropriate movement is helpful for sleep. Not too much, not too little, not too intense, but that Goldilocks amount of exercise is helpful for sleep as well. Okay, so thank you so much for sticking with me. I know that was a lot of information. Like I said, in my course, I have way more information, but it's all relevant. It's all super helpful. And I will really do walk you step by step through this process. It's not overwhelming, and I would love to help you improve your sleep. But I want you to right now just pick one action step. What are you going to do? Are you going to work on your light exposure, or balance your blood sugar, or work on your caffeine intake, go to bed earlier, work on your stress, or maybe adjust your workout routine a little bit? You can try a new supplement if you ask your doctor first, or is there something else? You're like, you know what, this actually came up when you were talking and I want to work on XYZ. I would love to know. So feel free to reach out to me and tell me what your action step is. I also created a resources page for you. So I have 10 tips for better sleep. You can take a sleep quiz and see how your sleep is doing right now. I also have a link to a sleep mask, a supplement bundle, and the Blue Blocks glasses that I recommend. If you use that code Well From Within, again, you'll get 10% off. So make sure that you check those out. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to me. I'm at Well From Within Co on Instagram, or you can just email me directly, Lexie@wellfromwithin.co. .com. And I would love to chat more with you. This is honestly my passion. If you can't tell, I didn't do a good job in this presentation, but this is my passion. I'm so excited to help people sleep better, because I think it's one of the biggest pieces that is stopping us from, reaching all of our goals, from seeing results in the gym, to our work, to just enjoying our lives with our families. So thank you so much again for being here. And if you have any questions, I would love to help. Thank you so much. Have a great day.